The main audience of this genre is implied to be younger, but the fact that these stories focus on the growth of the main character or characters suggests a universal identification. The binary of childhood and adulthood is an essential issue to approach in defining roles. This subjectivity begins, according to Jacques Derrida, with the criticism of binary oppositions, like male and female or off and on. Our purpose for creating these oppositions, he says, is to overturn them. Meaning is created by something's difference or relation to other things. For example, black and white are clear binary oppositions, but the point at which we stop defining something as black and start defining it as white is less clear. This is because we use words like white and black, signifiers, to identify something that we perceive, the signified. When someone shows us a structure with 4 walls and a roof and tells us it is a house, we can generally agree with them. However, when we are also told the same structure is a barn, we begin to consider other factors such as location and purpose. We can also suppose a barn if we are only told the location and purpose of that structure, and suppose a location and purpose given a barn. This difference between signifier and signified is what Derrida believed created identity, and identity is one of the most important elements of role-playing. Final Fantasy is very aware of the androgyny of their characters. It is difficult to immediately identify what gender Kuja is, if any. This is only a label, and in Final Fantasy VIII, Squall appears to be aware of this during the sorceress assassination sequence when he responds to Irvin. Right and wrong are not what separate us and our enemies. It's our different standpoints, our perspectives that separate us. Both sides blame one another. There's no good or bad side, just two sides holding different views. The binary opposition of right and wrong is overturned here, and as a result, we learn more clearly what role Squall plays as a hired mercenary in this political war. Richard Bartle, in Designing Virtual Worlds, notes that the alignment system is an effective way of defining characters. Originating from the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing board game, the alignment system characterizes players based on the notions of lawful and chaotic, and good and evil. On the axis of good and evil, good generally implies the preservation of life, while evil the destruction of it. On the axis of lawful and chaotic, lawful generally implies adherence to rules and concern for others, while chaotic, the reluctance to adhering to rules and concern for oneself. Neutral is the middle ground, which is usually characterized by acting on instinct. Another potential aspect of neutral characters is the conscious decision to be so. Rather than acting solely on instinct, true neutral characters may act neutrally on the belief that balance is necessary between the axes. While Squall does not necessarily act on the part of balance, his quote about perspectives certainly displays an awareness of his role. This self-awareness in role-playing has been a theme so far, and will continue to denote especially meaningful moments and scenes. Another difficult to categorize, and therefore meaningful character, is Seymour from Final Fantasy X. His motivation to destroy the world seems evil at first, but the intention is to prevent suffering, which appears also to be good. He's a maester of Yevon, a highly organized religious institution which suggests lawfulness, but he also ends up being a major cause for the dissolution of Yevon and his race, the Guado. He even kills his father, the person who brings about his existence, suggesting a chaotic disposition. While he seems to contradict himself, his actions maintain the balance of life and death, salvation and destruction, and in his quest for balance, His self-awareness and moments of clarity provide the characters and the player with insight on their respective realities. In discussing Seymour's marital request to Una, the following conflict is revealed.
You know what Una must do.
Of course. Lady Una, no, all summoners, are charged with bringing peace to Spira. But this means more than just defeating sin. She must ease the suffering of all Spira. She must be a leader for the people. I proposed to Lady Una as a maester of Yevon.
Spira is no playhouse. A moment's diversion may amuse an audience, but it changes nothing.
Even so, the actors must play their parts.
The whole scene is very theatrical, with the mysterious microphone swinging from a cord attached to the ceiling and the audience metaphor. Though Oren appears to hold the majority opinion at first, Seymour's response goes unchallenged. The player is able to gain different perspectives on the situation through the many other characters, whether it is security, time, politics, or selflessness. Every character provides a different dispute to the purpose of marriage for love. Eventually, the marriage becomes favorable to the characters. This opening of perspectives occurs not only for the characters, but for the player as well. This game, and any art form, is just a moment's diversion. Yet it teaches us essential truths that are neglected every day. The villain is not always wrong. There are a lot more colors than black and white. You do not need to love someone you marry, and more importantly, you do not need to marry someone you love. Maturation is also evident in Final Fantasy X, when Tidus becomes aware that he will no longer exist if he saves Spira from sin. Despite the selfishness he shows when he first arrives at Besaid by disregarding the teachings and entering the Cloister of Trials, he eventually sacrifices himself to save Spira and Una, even though he hates Yevon's philosophies of sacrifice. The clearest symbol of this binary occurs after the party defeats the guardian worm Evre. The cutscene shows Evre's Pyreflies, a recurring symbol of assured death within the game, falling over Seymour's marriage, the social institution of ensuring the creation and preservation of life. It becomes clear that both life and death require each other. No one can die if no one is alive, the main premise behind Seymour's quest to destroy the world. Also, sometimes some must die so that others can live, the main premise behind the Summoner's Pilgrimage. Once again, the interaction of these binaries facilitates growth and an essential understanding of both the world of Spira and the player's world. Growth implies change from one state to another, but the plot of any story focuses more on the conflicts and transitions between those states, or the process. Arnold van Gennep, in his Rites of Passage, notes that the life of an individual in any society is a series of passages from different liminal periods. Liminality is the state of transition or ambiguity that occurs in rituals or phases like birth, puberty, marriage, and death. Characters that are liminal are either experiencing these transitional phases or hold positions that exist between conventional societal expectations. Unsurprisingly, the characters of Final Fantasy are brimming with ambiguities. Just in Final Fantasy VII, Cloud and Vincent are former Shinra employees, now fighting against Shinra. Red 13 and Aerith are the last of their kind, between extinction and existence. Reeve, or Katesith, is a double agent spying on Shinra for Cloud's party and spying on Cloud's party for Shinra. Now in Final Fantasy X, Una and Seymour, half human and half Elbed Guado, respectively are the links between their races and humanity. Braska, through one of Jet's spheres, comments on the liminality of his party composition.
They're wrong. A fallen summoner, a man from Xanarkand, and a warrior monk doomed to obscurity for refusing the hand of the priest's daughter. What delightful irony it would be if we defeated sin.
Stop gabbing and get me out of here.
Of course, change is not always that easy. Final Fantasy X's sequel deals with the conflict of two factions, the Youth League, who want change, and New Yevon, who resist change. Despite the world being saved, the essential paradox of change will always exist. Things will remain the same, insofar as they will continue to change. Resolutions are only temporary. Even on a more personal level, the difficulty in change is depicted in the graduation sequence of Final Fantasy VIII. We learn that 3 of our playable characters, and 1 non-playable, have passed the exam. Cid walks up to each character and whispers in their ear a personal encouragement. When he gets to the non-playable character Nida, he says, "Do your best, even if you don't stand out," which resembles an aside in drama, which is when an actor says something that the audience is supposed to hear, but not the other characters. If we take this address literally, Nida is then a representative of the audience. It is difficult to find an identity in a multitude of others trying to find theirs. We can also assume that Cid's encouraging words to Squall, finally a gunblade specialist, would have been said to Cypher had he graduated, because he and Squall were the only persons who fought with a gunblade. This suggests a sort of uniqueness and comments on the binary between unique and indistinguishable. Cid's emphasis on learning rather than following orders provides the base for the entire seed and garden metaphor, that the most intrinsic purpose of education is to grow and mature. Cid says, "You must follow orders exactly during combat, but I'm not entirely without sympathy for you. I don't want you all to become machines. I want you all to be able to think and act for yourselves." End quote. But as all living beings are intended to grow and mature, it is difficult to do so without feeling like a machine. This is the conflict for Squall, a normally introspective person who becomes leader of a small squad of Seed, and then eventually of all of Balam Garden. He struggles to lead because of his callous disregard for his squad members, but eventually becomes a source of inspiration, delivering a moving speech during the fight with Galbadia Garden. This awareness for others marks his growth throughout the story and is the essential conflict of growing up, finding an identity while simultaneously taking on responsibilities. Liminality continues in Final Fantasy X with the phenomenon of the unsent. Having died in a brutal manner or having a strong will to finish something in the mortal realm, these spirits are neither living nor dead. Unsent maesters of Yevon are capable of holding their positions, providing knowledge while maintaining political power. Orin is able to ride Sin because he is unsent, allowing him to travel to and from Dream Xanarkand. These characters are uninhibited by the limits of mortality, but also uninhibited by the limits of lifelessness. Similarly exists Dreams. Dream Xanarkand and all of its inhabitants are imagined into existence by the faith. We are not certain that Tidus once existed in the real Xanarkand, but perhaps someone like him once existed. This ambiguity of dreams, along with their position in between reality and imagination, makes them liminal characters. The connection between unsent and dreams is that both are composed of pyreflies. Machen, a traveling scholar and unsent, provides the player with knowledge about, among many other things, what pyreflies may be. He says, "The Albed have a theory, you know. They say the pyreflies are just reacting to visitors' thoughts and dreams, but only the dead appear on the far plane. No image of the living has ever been seen. It's a great mystery, but maybe the dead leave a bit of themselves in the hearts of the living, and that little bit borrows the pyreflies' power for their paranormal performance. Or maybe not, who knows. They may be called pyreflies, but they aren't really flies, you see. They're those lights you see whenever a fiend dies. The little fellows are responsible for a few fantastic phenomena. Visions of the past, spheres, fiends, these are all the pyreflies doing. In fact, pyreflies have something to do with aeons, too. The dreams of the faith reach through the spirit of the summoner, and that which is unreal becomes real for all to see. Or maybe not, who knows. Out of all the theories and implications that can come from this, I want to note the recurring theme of meta-theater and liminal characters. The phrases paranormal performance and that which is unreal becomes real for all to see once again compares the player's world to the game. In Luca, there is a theater separate from the stadium. In it, players can buy music spheres or movie spheres, which are cinematics that have already been experienced throughout the game as sort of a recollection of memories. Once the player has purchased all of the music spheres, the vendor will tell them that all of the spheres have been purchased. However, when all of the movie spheres have been purchased, the vendor says no more are available at the moment. This suggests that the last cutscene has yet to be unlocked for purchase. But because the player cannot use a save sphere after completing the game, they are unable to return to the Luca Theater and turn that memory into a sphere. The effect of expressing this inability to progress beyond the ending emphasizes the value of life. If the final boss is defeated, Titus and Orin, a dream without a dreamer and an unsent having fulfilled his purpose, will vanish. As a result, players will go back to before the ending to travel Spira, complete side quests, find better gear, and learn spells to better prepare them for that inevitable ending, familiarizing them with an issue that most mature adults still struggle with: accepting that which is final.